Well, hello everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. Thank you for joining. So today we will be speaking about paying for higher education in the United States, and we're thrilled to have our guest speakers from Northwestern Technical College, Technical College, and therefore, I'm going to give the floor to you guys. I know you're the experts on the topic, but before you start, just want to remind that this month, all of our events are actually scheduled with the representatives of colleges and universities that will be coming to Ukraine. So hope that everything you learned today will actually spark your interest in studying in the United States, and you will come and join us in during our U.S. higher education fairs in November. So please go ahead. Just wanted to make sure everybody is aware of that.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Beau James. As Liz mentioned, I'm from Northeast Wisconsin Technical College, located in Green Bay, Wisconsin. That's located about 3 hours north of Chicago, for any of you who have probably not heard of Green Bay. You also can see on the screen possibly my colleague Lisa's with us, so she's visiting from one of the other offices here at the campus. So we're both here just to kind of introduce a little bit more about some paying for college questions, and then we can certainly get into a little bit of Q&A with some general information as well. Lisa, I don't hear you, but if you want to say hi, go ahead.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so I am going to switch my presentation mode over to a PowerPoint that I have prepared. This is our paying for college PowerPoint. So can everybody see that now? Yes, no, maybe? Yes, okay, good. All right, so we put this presentation together about a year ago because we knew one of our most common questions that we receive from students has to deal with, how am I going to make my education affordable in the United States? How am I going to pay for things? And many international recruiters and advisors will note that do you have scholarships is probably the most common question that they get. And when international students think about that question, oftentimes they're asking, do you have full pay scholarships or, some sort of scholarships that are going to significantly cover the cost of my tuition? And we're always a little hesitant with those questions because unfortunately those really high paying scholarships, those full pay scholarships, those are pretty rare. Only about 0.3% of all four-year university students are on a full pay scholarship. And then also we see a lot of students will say, well, I maybe play a sport, so is there, like a college scholarship for my athletics? And those are also quite rare because only 0.7% are on those athletic scholarships. And that's of all students, that's not just international students. So if you figure out that, of all students, 4% in the United States are international students, what that means is that your chances of getting a full pay scholarship are statistically about 1 in 6,000. So for every 6,000 students who might be studying in the United States as an international student, only one of them is going to get a full pay scholarship. So that's a really difficult thing to think about if a lot of students are thinking, well, I'm going to need some serious financial support in order to get my way to the US to finish my higher education degree. So we put together some keys, some 5 keys to paying for college, and this is really designed to show you some of those alternative ways that you can find a way to pay for everything. Now, with the awards letter, I'll give you some background on me. I currently work at NWTC, but I have worked at a private college in the US before, and one of the things that the international offices will do there is they'll send their prospective international students these very nice award letters saying, congratulations, you've won some sort of named award like a President's Scholarship, and says you're going to be awarded $100,000. And you're thinking, way to go, all right? So you get pretty excited about that. That sounds like a lot of money. But when you start looking at the fine print and the details, you'll see that there's actually more than meets the eye. So usually those award letters that say, oh, it's going to be $100,000, well, it's actually spread out over 4 years, so maybe that's $25,000 per year. It'll tell you that it's probably contingent on maintaining some sort of GPA. So, if you arrive in the US in your first semester and it's a little bit of a challenge, and then you maybe don't get all A's in your classes, maybe you get all B's, or maybe one bad grade in one class because maybe you weren't prepared for the different teaching methods in the US, you could lose that really awesome scholarship. And then the other thing they'll note as well, the scholarship is going to only cover your tuition. It doesn't pay for the other things that you may have with your cost of living, such as your housing or your food. And then they'll, of course, want to see that you have some of your financial resources in order to get your I-20. So, if you think about that and you have a bank account where you have $20,000 you set aside for college, you might be like, all right, I'm ready to go. But in my next slide, I show you how the banking on that might not be as awesome as it looks. So if you think about, well, where will my money go? So if you had a $30,000 tuition at the institution that you went to, and you got this awesome scholarship, maybe you only have about $5,000 left in tuition. But many of them, especially if they're residential campuses, will require you to live on campus, will require you to have some sort of food plan. So that can easily cost you $10,000 a year for that. Then there are things that you have to have as part of your studies. So you have to have some sort of health insurance as part of your F1 visa. So that's $3,000. Your books and supplies may cost a couple $1,000s. Airline tickets to the US may cost, $1,500. Then you have all your personal expenses, your cell phone, maybe some extra snacks on the side if you want some movie tickets in the evening. So if you add all those things up, you could be looking at $25,000 for your first year. And if your bank account started at $20,000, you are already going to be borrowing money before the end of your first year. And what's going to be your plan then for year 2, year 3, year 4? So that's where I think sometimes when we focus solely on those big scholarship awards, we sometimes miss the opportunity to address some of the other challenges that we have. So one of the tips that we really want to start students with is you should definitely be looking at the affordability of the college and university that you want to go to. If you are an absolute elite student, then you for sure can start looking at maybe getting one of those 1 in 6,000 full pay scholarships. But if you're like me and you're just a pretty good student, maybe not the best one in the state, but one of the best ones maybe in your high school or something like that, you can still use this pathway and make it very affordable. So when you look at, for example, 2-year colleges in the United States, they oftentimes will have tuition that's less than or around $5,000 per year. They also have benefits of very high levels of student support. They have small class sizes, which are nice. You will get in a small class size more direct faculty engagement, so that's certainly a benefit. And then you may be surprised to find out that a number of the 2-year colleges and universities in the United States actually have very high quality facilities. I think Lisa would confirm that on our campus right now, probably between 75% to 80% of the campus is either brand new or newly renovated within the past 3 to 5 years. So, we really have some nice facilities. You go through, Lisa does some tours with some of our domestic students. She can probably talk to some of the reactions that they get when we get into some of those places. So.
It is pretty amazing. The business, it's a college of business, so it's a great accreditation and great transfer opportunities to universities with that, but it literally has state-of-the-art glass offices and automatic computers rising in through the table, so it's a dual workspace, so it can be lecture and both lab styles. And just the equipment that students get to utilize, it is truly amazing. And then even in the engineering, the new trades offices, they've brought in some of the state-of-the-art equipment, and students are really working on the equipment that they will be working on in the field. So the hands-on learning I don't know if you can put a price on that.
Yeah, I think about our lab science program. Students are working with DNA research, and some of the equipment we have in those facilities, they don't even have at some of our nearby four-year universities. So it's very cool. So you think about affordability, sometimes you think that must correlate to quality, but that's really not always the case. So it is worth your while to investigate the universities and colleges that you're interested in, and really see what you're getting for your tuition dollar. So to give you just kind of a brief example, NWTC, or Northeast Wisconsin Technical College, where I'm from, our tuition runs between $5,000 and $6,000 per year generally for an international student. If you compare that to the U.S. national averages, the four-year public college or university is going to run close to about $25,000 per year, and a private four-year college is going to run over $30,000 per year. So tuition alone really can make a big difference for a student. The second element that we like to talk about in terms of tips is consider the cost of living. So I have a map up here on my slide, and it shows the various regions of the United States. And what it's showing you is the price parity. So if you had $100 to spend on a product, whether it's your food or a new phone or whatever it is, that $100 may go a different distance depending on where you live in the United States. So in this map where you see the darker blue colors, that indicates places where that $100 was going to go further. You're going to be able to buy more things with $100 because the prices are relatively less expensive. So you see some of the darkest blue areas, of course, in the American South, but in the Midwest where we are, in the central part of the country, and a little bit further into the Mountain West, you'll see that there are also lots of dark blues and lighter blues. So that's where you're going to find more value for your dollar. If you look at the red colors, this is where your $100 is not going to go quite as far. So if you wanted to, spend $100, you might only get the equivalent of $80 or $90 worth of value out of it. And if you look very carefully, all the bright red colors also unfortunately tend to be the most popular places in the United States. So when you're thinking like, oh, I've always dreamed of visiting the United States, you're probably thinking of a state like California or New York or Boston or Washington, D.C. or Miami or in Florida. These are all places that are much more expensive to live. So our recommendation for our students is, you can live in one of the more affordable parts of the country, and then when you're on one of your breaks, you can go vacation and check out some of those other places. So I think, Lisa, would you confirm like cost of living in Green Bay, Wisconsin relative to even nearby Chicago is pretty significant?
Absolutely. And I even had a brother that went to a city about 2.5 hours from us in Madison. And my living was way nicer than his here in Green Bay. I did go to college in Green Bay. And he paid, I would say, 3 times the cost that I did for a lesser value of a house. So absolutely, it is affordable. And there's still lots of fun things to do in the city.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we definitely recommend that students kind of keep this cost in mind, and realize that sometimes you have to ask tough questions from your admissions advisors at the colleges and universities you're interested in to find out, when they give you an estimate for the cost of living, am I really going to get what you're saying I'm going to? Is that cost of living include on-campus housing, or does it, does their estimate mean like you'd have to live off campus in a very shabby apartment with 2 or 3 roommates? Because, if you want to spend, most colleges will estimate cost of living somewhere between 10 and 15,000, but if you look how far that money goes in different places, it's significantly different. So in this graph, you can see about $11,000 per year, in Green Bay, Wisconsin. That's basically what you need to live on campus and single accommodation, pays for your meal plan, those sorts of things. If you want to take that same situation and go to a place like Chicago, which is, like I said, about 3 hours south of Green Bay, it may cost you twice as much. And if you want to go to really famous places like San Francisco or New York City, realistically, you could be spending easily $30,000 to $35,000 per year just on your cost of living, not talking about your tuition or fees related stuff at all. So it's a very significant difference. The third thing we really like to talk about is the benefit of applying for scholarships. Now, when I started, I said, well, these big scholarships are pretty rare, and that's true. But what's not not the case in terms of competitiveness is a lot of the smaller scholarships. So a number of colleges and universities all across the country have smaller scholarship opportunities available. And in the private realm, there are also numerous smaller scholarships that students can apply for. So instead of trying to find what's this one really big scholarship that I can apply for, and knowing that there are going to be hundreds or thousands of other students also trying to get that very competitive scholarship, think about ways in which you can apply for several smaller scholarships and maybe pool those all together to help make your costs more affordable. And you'll find that some of those scholarships will be need-based, some of them will be merit-based, some will be based on the service that you've done, either in your community or on your campus. And it's a really good opportunity. So Lisa, I'll bring you in. You can probably talk a little bit about our foundation scholarships that we use on our campus, and how is that model kind of similar to what I was saying?
So students can apply for these scholarships as many semesters as they attend college here, which is pretty amazing. Last year, I think we gave, I think it was between $300,000 or $500,000 in scholarship awards just for our NWTC students. And they ranged anywhere from, I would say the small end is probably $500, but they can sometimes range up to $1,500 each semester. And when we look at how much a semester costs here at the campus, it can sometimes be half, if not almost the full amount. So it is pretty amazing. And that the fact that we don't put a limit on that is a great opportunity for international students especially.
Yeah, so we definitely see a lot of international students applying. We give them help going through the application cycle, like how do I write a good personal statement, how do I get good letters of recommendation, and all those things can be very, very helpful. And I think it's interesting as advisors for students, we also get emails at times from the Scholarship Foundation saying you need to let more students know about applying and tell them to apply because we don't have enough students applying for all these scholarship dollars that we have. So, I mean, it's really true that the small scholarships sometimes get overlooked by students because they think, well, is $500 or $1,000 really going to matter? Well, when you're combining all different types of scholarships and all different types of ways of paying for college, it can add up and really can make a difference. So, we definitely strongly encourage students to not overlook those small scholarship opportunities that you can have on your college or university campus. The fourth point is maybe one that we do see students ask about fairly frequently, and that's in terms of looking for on-campus employment. Now, at any college or university in the United States, the visa rules are the same. For the first year, your only option is on-campus employment. And then you can only work up to 20 hours per week in that employment opportunity. So you definitely won't be able to make enough money to pay for all your, your tuition and your cost of living. So unfortunately, working and paying your way through college isn't exactly possible through on-campus employment alone. The other thing that you really want to do is if you're interested in on-campus employment, you need to ask the college or university where you're thinking of attending about, what percentage of the international students really are getting jobs on campus? How many hours does the average international student get to work if they're working on campus? Because you may be thinking, yeah, I really want to work 20 hours per week so I can, set the most money aside to help pay for my other expenses. But is that realistic at the college or university that you're planning on going to? You also want to ask, what are the average wages for students on campus? Is it going to be a federal minimum, which is about $7.25, or is it going to be a little bit more? So, for example, at NWTC, our students working on campus tend to make about $10 per hour. And then finally, you should ask about working in summer and during breaks, because actually during those times, you can work a little bit more than 20 hours per week. So it's very common for students when they get to summer break and they have the opportunity and the time to work a little bit more, they usually want to try to get some extra hours in. So definitely ask if those sorts of opportunities are really available to you as an international student at the college or university that you're interested in. Now finally, and this is the biggest one, using your practical training. Now there is curricular practical training and optional practical training that are available to F1 international students when they study in the United States. Now these options don't become available until after you have been studying in the US for 1 year full time. But at that point you become eligible. First you become eligible for what's called CPT. And in CPT, you're able to do work related to your area of study, and it can be paid internships, it can be off-campus employment, but the rules about that are usually interpreted differently from one school to another. So it's very important when you're thinking about a college or university in the US to ask your admissions advisor to tell you a little bit more about what are the CPT rules that are available to international students at that college or university. So you can be working up to 20 hours per week. Some students even choose to work above 20 hours per week if they want to use their full-time CPT. You can definitely get help, building your resume and getting work experience by doing off-campus work for CPT. And then CPT employment can oftentimes pay a lot more than those on-campus jobs that we just talked about. So to give you an example, at our college, we have like a business analyst program, and we've had our international students who are in their second year of that program able to go out and work for local insurance companies, and instead of making $9 or $10 per hour on our campus, they're actually making $17 or $18 per hour as part of their CPT experience, and that's some pretty considerable wage. Anywhere you would go in the U.S., $17 or $18 an hour would be considered a very well-paying job. So the questions you want to ask: are international students able to use CPT, especially starting in their second year? Also ask, do international students have to take internship credits to use CPT? This is one of the less well understood parts about CPT for international students. They may arrive at a college or university and say, oh yes, I can do CPT, but then when it's time and they want to do CPT, the college or university says, okay, now you need to sign up for this 3-credit internship class. And then, depending on what the per credit charge is for that, you could be paying hundreds or even thousands of dollars to have to, in internship credits just to do that job. And what it does is it basically wipes out a lot of the economic benefit of working or doing a paid internship because you end up having to pay the college or university for those internship credits. So ask about internship credits as a requirement for CPT. The other thing you may ask about, if your financial situation really requires you to consider using full-time CPT, you need to ask the university if it will allow full-time CPT, because some colleges and universities are more hesitant about that. And then finally, asking a question about what percentage of students who want to work off campus with CPT are actually able to do so. So that can be a consideration depending on what type of degree you're seeking. So, when I was an undergraduate student, I studied history. And I even found out with a full bachelor's degree in history, there wasn't much in the way of jobs out there in the community. So, if you're a liberal arts major, you may have a harder time finding employment off campus. So, talking to your admissions advisors about the employability of the degree that you're looking to go into is a good question, because it's also going to be related to your ability to find employment in your CPT opportunity as well. Along with CPT, we talk about OPT. Now, OPT is the 1 year of work that you're allowed to do on your student visa after you've graduated. So if you think about it this way, you're going to complete your educational degree, and then you're probably going to want to use that opportunity to get some experience working in the US. Some students have historically tried to use this as a pathway then to even going on to maybe like a work visa. And those opportunities do sometimes exist, but you know, that maybe isn't available to everyone. But that work experience that you can get working in the US certainly can help you when you want to return home and, you know, apply for jobs. And if a lot of different people are applying for a job that you're interested in, and maybe you have that 1 year of work experience in the United States and you have those skills that you've developed through that experience, that probably can help make you more competitive in your job application. So, you know, it's a really good opportunity for experience. In addition, it's an opportunity to work and make some money back from, you know, all that money that you spent in getting your education. So you don't have to attend school anymore when you're on OPT, so you're not paying any tuition at that point, you're just working. So it's a nice time to make some money. So when you're thinking about a college or university, you need to be asking questions. You know, what percentage of the students who graduate in my degree area are able to get employment within 1 year? And then what are those average salaries for those graduates? And most colleges and universities have some sort of graduate follow-up survey in which they kind of gather some of those. So I'm going to bring Lisa in again. Lisa probably talks about this more than even I do because she works with a lot of our domestic students and they're very interested in these questions. So when we talk about our programs and our graduate follow-up surveys, what kinds of things do you tell them, Lisa?
Well, I guess we can proudly say our median salary just went up. So we're now sitting at about $41,500 as the median salary. So we're over the 40,000, which is amazing. So for a 2-year program, I would say when you're looking for jobs, entry level, whether you just graduated from a bachelor's degree or you just graduated from an associate degree, you're probably going to make the same amount of money. And so the more education you have doesn't always mean the more money that you're going to make. So that is what I always encourage students to research, is find out what is the education that you need for the type of work that you're trying to do, and then take advantage of those opportunities to earn that kind of that minimal training, because you're still going to make a great salary. And then if you get an opportunity to be employed, they will sometimes then help you to continue on with your education and to potentially be in management and leadership and those kinds of things. So yeah, so it is a great starting salary. And I will tell you, with a bachelor's degree, I did not start out making that much when I graduated, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I did a humanities degree and I got my master's degree. It still didn't make as much as some of our students are making with their 2-year degrees. So I agree, it can be really tough. So, I mean, that's really important. And I think if you look at, you know, our particular college, we do a lot of the Associate of Applied Science. That's things like IT, engineering technologies, there's business courses, there's health related courses. So those tend to be very highly employable areas. And if you look at our graduate follow-up surveys, you're definitely seeing, you know, 90 percentiles in most of those programs for the percentage of students who are able to find employment within 6 months of graduation. And then those median salaries, as Lisa pointed out, are definitely going up every year. So the slide that I have here shows about 39,000. That was based on last year. So even within a year or two, we've seen a pretty significant jump in the salaries of our graduates. But at the same time, we have not seen a significant jump in the cost of attending NWTC. So you can see at the bottom of the slide there, I have the average cost of a degree at NWTC is about $35,000. That's held very steady for international students over the past 4 years. We have not seen significant jumps in either the cost of tuition nor in the cost of living. So that's great, but we have seen you know, significant jumps in the median salary for those students who want to go out and work for a year after they graduate. And this gets us to the really exciting part of this discussion. if we look solely at the 2+2 opportunity, and that's where you study 2 years at a technical or community college, and then you do 2 years at a partnering four-year university to get an associate's degree and then a bachelor's degree, you can actually, just looking at OPT alone, truly have the opportunity to kind of pay yourself back for all of the expenses that you would incur while studying in the United States. So if you look, we have a little chart here. So if you look at that 2-year associate degree at NWTC, the cost is about $35,000 over the 2 years. So that's with all of your tuition, all of your food and expenses, your insurance, everything. And then you have the opportunity to work 1 year with OPT, and we estimate on our median salary in this chart about $38,000. As Lisa just pointed out, that's jumped now to $41,000, so we could even update the chart here a little bit more. And then if you went to one of our partnering universities, most students go to the University of Wisconsin system when they come here to NWTC, but you'll probably spend in 2 more years of study at about another $50,000. And then if you go after you get a bachelor's degree and work for a year, you can have the chance to earn, close to $50,000 with that bachelor's degree. So if you put that all together, you're talking about a net cost really of 0. So you paid for a couple of years, but then you earned it back. And then you paid for a couple of years, and then you earned it back. If you take the traditional pathway into a 4-year college or university, your opportunity is not going to look the same, because you're going to have to go all 4 years to your bachelor's degree before you get a degree and before you become eligible for your OPT. And then you're only going to get 1 year of OPT because you only get 1 year per level. So with 1 year of employment, you might make that same $47,000, but at the end, you will have spent $100,000 on the front end and $47,000 to earn back. So you will have spent over $50,000 that you're not going to have the opportunity to recover through OPT alone. So just looking at this one specific element, you can see that paying for college using a 2+2 alone is a really great way to make your education in the US affordable. Now you can see all the way on the right side, there's the optional 2-year STEM extension with OPT rules right now. If you are in a STEM area, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, you may be able to work for an additional 2 years beyond your 1 year of OPT as part of those STEM rules. And that's at the bachelor's degree or higher. So that's something that you can keep in mind if you are a STEM student as well. So I just kind of want to finish by showing you a few more things on this kind of 2+2 pathway. It basically refers to pathway, or 2+2 is the opportunity to start your education at the associate degree level and then move into the bachelor's degree programs. American students are definitely comfortable with this. This is an example of how our education system is considered to be very flexible. International students are sometimes a little bit more hesitant about the 2+2 pathway just because they're less familiar with it. So maybe there's not 2-year schools in their country, or maybe those 2-year schools don't really have the opportunity to then fold into a 4-year university degree. So it's hard for them to sometimes imagine. And then when we talk about delivery methods, we also have some flexibility there too. So we have in-person, online, blended apprenticeships. And in the fall of 2016, 6.3 million students in the US took at least one online class. So, those delivery methods are, I think, common for American students, but maybe a little bit less common for our international friends. And then when we talk about these institution types, 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, online schools, it's kind of hard for international students to know the distinction, whereas American students can be very comfortable with that. And then if we look at the statistics from 2015, 38% of undergraduate students in the US were at a 2-year college, so more than 1/3. And about half of all students had completed at least some of their education at a 2-year school. So maybe they did 1 year or took a few classes in the summer, or maybe did a full associate degree. There's a lot of flexibility for students, and American students tend to be very comfortable with that flexibility, whereas international students are sometimes a little bit more hesitant. Lisa, would you add anything about that, since you do work with our American students more than I do?
The 2+2?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I think more and more employers are seeing the benefit of technical education because of the practical experience. You know, when you go to a university, you really have to try hard to seek those opportunities for the training, internships, job opportunities, and so on and so forth. A lot of those opportunities are built in right here in our curriculum. And that's why, you know, having that first 2 years of experience, being able to go out and get a job, universities are seeing, you know, higher success rates in like their bachelor's degrees then as well, because people have that real life experience. They're taking their studies more seriously and really getting the most out of that education as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of a good segue, because when we talk about that, there are some very significant challenges that we think about when we talk about a 4-year educational experience. Because if you have to go full 4 years to get your bachelor's degree, things sometimes happen. There's, of course, our time commitments that we have, you know, whether it be to our studies, and then if we want to do some work on the side, and family situations back home, that can definitely pull us in a lot of different directions. So it's easy for students, particularly when they're in their first year, to kind of maybe lose their way. And it can be really hard to get back on track if they have to go full, you know, 4 years to get to their end goal. Financial situations come up because, like we mentioned, if you maybe are okay for the first year or 2 years of your 4-year degree, but maybe something happens, you know, like a life event, maybe if someone back home in the family got sick, or maybe you yourself got sick and had to miss some school, it can be really hard to get back on track. And then motivation is always an issue. So maybe you were really excited when you started out your first year, but by your 3rd year and your 4th year, you weren't really sure if you had chosen the right major. And then you're left with some really difficult motivation, no questions. And as a result, we see that with the 6-year graduation rate in the United States for 4-year university students, in 2015 was only about 60%. So, you know, if you're in a room and there's 5 people standing there, only 3 of those students who start at the 4-year university are going to be graduated within 6 years. The other 2 won't have made it. So it's a really difficult challenge to try to get to that end goal when it's so far out. So we really like to talk about the 2+2 because it kind of gives you that little opportunity, that break in the middle. And I talk about on my next slide here a little bit about chunking, because you get to kind of get that first 1 or 2 years down. Then, you, as Lisa said, you're going out and you're getting some work experience, and then you're going back into the educational system and you're kind of getting that second 2 years in. So if there's any sort of stumbling or roadblocks that you run into, you know, you don't have to go 4 years. You may just have to go 1 more year or 1 more semester to get that first credential. And then you can address the things that are happening in life, and then you can get back into your educational pathway as you move forward. We also want you to know that articulation agreements are important. So I mentioned a lot of the graduates at our college end up in the University of Wisconsin system. If you're thinking about a 2-year college, make sure that you research what is their articulation agreements, where are you guaranteed admission after you've completed a 2-year program, what kind of guarantees are there for your credits to transfer, are you guaranteed some sort of advanced status when you come from a 2-year school? Because these are good questions that you'll want to know about. And then we also introduced earlier, we have excellent resources, we have good class sizes, lots of student support services, and certainly we have very accessible campuses. And what that means is if you go to a major research university and there's 30,000 students on the campus, you know, even getting from one end to the campus to the other can be really challenging. So, you know, the smaller 2-year schools give you a little bit smaller environment to maneuver in, which can be very helpful when you're new to a campus. Other benefits, we talked about tuitions. You have the opportunity to stop out. And then you also have the opportunity to try out a new community. So you may not think about that, but you know, if you do 2 years at one college campus, you're going to get to know about the culture and the community there. But then if you do a 2+2 transfer, you're going to also have the opportunity to live in another city and get to know a new community and get to experience a little bit different culture, because from one city to the next in the US, there's definitely going to be some significant differences. I mean, Lisa kind of talked about, was it your brother in Madison versus Green Bay? Big difference.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely think that that's a cool thing and it's a good opportunity for our students. So when we talk about that motivation, chunking is that breaking things down into smaller pieces so that you're able to get through them with more confidence and motivation. The other benefit we like to talk to is this big fish, little pond phenomenon. And this is where when students are in a situation, they usually gauge themselves based on relative to their peers. So you may have aspirations to go to a really big name university. And if you go to an elite school and you arrive on campus, you're going to be surrounded by other elite students. And if you find there's a stumbling block right away in your education and career, or you're not getting access to some of the opportunities that you really wanted to do, like an internship or something like that, you may feel like, wow, these other students are so much more amazing than I am. And you may feel like I'm starting to lose confidence in my ability to be a good student. Whereas if you kind of jump into a smaller environment, a smaller school, you're going to get to know your classmates better. You're going to have access to those opportunities yourself, and that's going to help you build your resume, but it's also going to help you build your confidence. And that can really help you with the motivation to keep going and to know that you are a good student and know that you will be successful. So we talk about this with our two-year college students and their ability. They usually can improve their grades or can get really good grades. They have opportunities at student leadership, so it's not uncommon for our international students to be involved in student clubs, to be club officers, to be involved in student government, to take advantage of conference opportunities either in our state or traveling to other parts of the country, to be involved in community service or community involvement, so that they're really doing things that are helping them stand out. And then when they apply in the future to a four-year university or they're applying for a job in the future, they have lots of great experiences that they're able to point to. And they look like highly qualified candidates because of those experiences. So one little thing I always want to talk about, our catchphrase at NWTC is start here, go anywhere. But I say that's anywhere with an asterisk. Sometimes you will hear from two-year colleges and they'll say, yeah, you can transfer to any school in the United States. Well, that's true. You can transfer to any school in the United States, but the articulation agreements will really determine how many of those credits that you did in your undergraduate experience are going to be able to transfer into the college or university that you want to go to. And usually those articulation agreements are regional. So you may talk to a community college representative from the West Coast, and they may tell you, yeah, you can transfer to Pitt in Pennsylvania. It may be true that students transfer to those schools, but they might not have an articulation agreement that's going to guarantee that you're going to be able to take all of your credits with you. So make sure you ask some tough questions about, okay, if I want to go to this university and I start at your two-year college, what are my chances really of getting all of the credits that I've taken in my undergraduate or my two-year experience to get them to transfer over to my four-year college or university? Because that's a very important point, is you don't want to have to take an extra year or an extra 2 years of school to finish that bachelor's degree, because then that wipes out the economic benefit of having done the 2+2 in the first place. And I always tell students, if you're really passionate about going to school, for example, in California, and you want to go to a University of California system school, you probably want to look at a two-year college in the state of California or nearby. You probably wouldn't start in a state like mine, like Wisconsin. Likewise, if you wanted to go to the University of Wisconsin system, you would definitely want to start in the state of Wisconsin or in our region. You probably wouldn't start at a two-year community college in the state of California. So if you're really passionate about the geographical location, then you probably should look at some of the two-year schools within that location. And so that's basically the same limitation I talked about here. 2+2 does not always equal 4. So you really have to ask good questions to make sure that you are getting the deal that you think that you are getting. All right, and that's it for the little PowerPoint presentation. So I am going to switch over here, and then we'll be able to give you the opportunity to ask your questions. Okay. So Liz, are you still there?
Yes, we are all here. So thank you very much for that fantastic presentation you just had. I guess if anybody has any question in the room, would be able to ask them just by speaking into the microphone. Is the sound okay for you? Can you hear us fine from here?
Yeah, absolutely.
And for everybody who's online, feel free to put in your questions. There's a chat box, there's a Q&A box. So I don't know, whichever guys works better for you.
Don't be shy.
Well, I guess I have a question anyway, so maybe I'll jump in to start this conversation going. You did speak quite elaborately about different transfer opportunities after the 2-year college to a 4-year university to finish a bachelor's degree. But one of the things that we get a lot of questions about here at Education USA is whether or not any of those articulation agreements you might have would also make those students eligible for any financial aid as they go on into their another 2 years at a university, right? So maybe since in generally speaking, international transfer students are usually not eligible for any financial aid, right? At least in most of the cases. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on that and how that worked out. I don't know if you have any cases that you'd feel particularly fine sharing with us.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and certainly it is something to take into consideration, and I would say that again gets back to if you have a specific university or 4-year university in mind that you want to get into, definitely ask what types of scholarships they would have for a student who was coming from a 2+2 transfer situation, because it is institution by institution. And I won't lie, when it comes especially to private colleges and universities, they have very high ticket prices. You know, their tuition is extremely high, their cost of living is extremely high. And what they try to do to, you know, to sweeten the motivation to get students to start as a freshman student as opposed to coming in as a junior level student is they will try to give a little bit better scholarship opportunities to students who come in as freshmen, and they may not offer quite as much to students who transfer in. So then you have to do a little bit of math on your own to see, well, if I do this 2+2, I'm going to save this amount of money, I may be able to work and make this amount of money. Is that going to offset the difference between maybe what the scholarship is for an initial student at that university versus a transfer student at that university? Now, I'll be very honest, I think when you're working with state universities, they tend to have very consistent amounts of financial resources. So there's a little bit less discretion in the international office or the scholarships you know, departments. They really are usually based on what are you coming in with, what is your GPA, maybe what have you had for test scores, you know, if it was an SAT or things like that. Usually those awards are pretty standard, so it doesn't really matter if you were a transfer or not, or maybe they have the same thing where, you know, transfers always kind of get this X amount of dollars. And then, like I said before, you really kind of have to do the math. Is it worth doing the 2+2 with that extra year of work in the middle? Or do I get the better deal if I, you know, start out as a freshman and take the freshman package that they give me and then have to deal with those other expenses as well? So it's a complex situation, and as is the case more often than not, it's a school by school determination. So you really have to be diligent and do some of your own homework and, you know, kind of do some of your own planning in advance of that. So good question. Lisa, would you add anything to that?
You covered it perfectly.
Okay.
I guess the overall consensus is college is expensive for everybody. It honestly is. And I mean, I think did you cover that? The national debt, I think, for student loans and things like that is like $38,000. So it's not, you know, so international students aren't necessarily going to incur more debt than a domestic student. So, you know, thinking of it that way. But yeah, I always work with my students all the time in scholarships, and to really take advantage if your university or college offers those writing workshops, which sometimes they do, to definitely help with that. And I know students who have actually in like the STEM fields have gotten $5,000 a year. So that is a huge scholarship, you know, when you're looking at the, you know, the cost for us especially.
Yeah, we definitely have some great opportunities for students, very specific situations as well. You know, we've had some of our international students do the same sort of thing that Lisa's talking about, where they do get, you know, those better support packages, and they're really not paying anything for their tuition, and they are getting some work on campus and stuff like that. So that's definitely a good example there. I see we had a question come up from Nadia. She asks, tell us about scholarships for PhD degrees. So Nadia, you know, I went through a PhD as well, and basically once you get into grad school, there's not as much in the way of scholarships anymore. Generally what you're looking for at that point is you're looking for assistantships. So maybe you'd be a graduate teaching assistant, maybe you'd be a research assistant on the campus. Those tend to be the ways in which you get both reduced tuition rates, and then you can also maybe earn some money, particularly if like you're a teaching assistant. Residential assistants are another example of that. So those are usually the ways that graduate students find some additional financial support. The other thing with PhD students is that you start to become eligible for more national programs, so you should certainly be working with Education USA on like Fulbright opportunities and some of those things as well. You really start to see less and less kind of institutional scholarships, although in some cases, you know, if you're an exceptional student, you can still get some, you know, research dollars or something related to that, but usually it's the assistantships where we start to see the dollars available for international students there. So, you know, we're a, you know, undergraduate institution only. We don't tend to work with graduate students unless for some reason, you know, they got a graduate degree in one area and they really wanted to supplement their skills. You know, maybe they did something like an MBA and then they wanted to learn more about IT, or maybe they, you know, did something like me in the humanities, and then they decide, well, I better have some business skills to go along with that. So they might take like a business class or do a business associate degree. So it's a little bit different for our institution, but it's a good question. Thank you for bringing it up.
Well, it doesn't seem like there are any more questions coming in anywhere at this point, but I guess you could also probably, with all your experience in international recruitment, comment a little bit on what are the most, let's say, challenging, maybe pieces of the both, you know, planning for college admission in the US and going through the process for internationals, as from what you've seen and what your experiences has been so far. Maybe some tips on what to be particularly focused on for any international applicant.
Yeah, so I would say with my experience with international students, one of the biggest challenges is to, you know, I always encourage them, you probably have an ideal you know, school that you may have heard of that you think is really awesome. You may have a place in the United States that you've heard about and it sounds really great. But you really have to do your research, I think, to find the best opportunity for your academic and professional goals. So there's probably colleges and universities that you've never heard of and places that you've never heard of that may have a program that's just perfect for your you know, academic and professional goals, and maybe at a price point that's very realistic for you, as opposed to if you try to go to, you know, some idealized institution that doesn't have a ton of interest in you and it's not really going to give you much financial support. You may really stretch your budget, you may stretch your family's budget if you try to get into that institution, and you probably missed an opportunity to find a much better deal someplace else. So, you know, I know we all have kind of dreams of places that we want to go and visit. I always tell students, you can always go visit on vacation, but when it comes to your education, it's worth doing the research to find out about the places that maybe you haven't heard about, because I promise you, you're probably going to find a much better deal at a place you've never heard of than you're going to find in one of those real name brand institutions, because they have students coming to them from all over the world, and those students are coming from places where they have really deep pockets. They have lots of money to spend, and the university knows that they're going to spend it because the university knows that they're a name brand institution. So you know, that's just the thing that, you know, when you see colleges and universities coming to the Education USA fairs, like we're going to be at your fair coming up here in November, they're usually the ones that are motivated to come out to meet you, because they are trying to, you know, do what our school is, which is to get more diversity on our campus, to have more international representation from colleges or from countries around the world. They're going to be coming with great, you know, packages, great academic plans, great financial opportunities in terms of resources for studying. So it's really good to turn out to that fair, to talk to those institutions, to get that opportunity to know more about places that maybe you just hadn't heard about up until this point. So that would kind of be my high level you know, pep talk for coming out to the fair and for taking advantage of meeting some of the schools that you might not have had the chance to meet up to this point.
Well, fantastic. Thank you very much. That is indeed very important to really highlight how through this type of webinars, as well as through attending the fairs, you guys are really making a great effort to connect with Ukrainian students and to help them to understand the benefit of education in the United States.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Lisa, do you have any parting words of wisdom?
I don't. Well, we're happy to hopefully meet some of you at the fair coming up, and I wish you the best. Honestly, I do, because picking that right university or college is a tough one, and so just take advantage of all the resources out there.
And I just want to also note for folks that if you're kind of interested in this presentation and you did want to see some more resources, if you go to our international students page, we have what's called our Paying for College resource. And it really is just something that you can check out. It talks about our 5 keys to paying for college, so you can get that information on our website as well. So, you know, it might be a little flyer that you can download and you can check out, and of course contact us if you have any more questions. So just wanted to do a quick plug for that as well.
That is amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you for your fantastic presentation today. We are very much thrilled and looking forward to seeing you in Ukraine already in November.
All right, sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.